I mean, if you're out there like getting that fucking bread, you can get that $60 magazine gun. That's cool. Hey guys, what's up? I'm Dylan from American Concealment Solutions, and we are continuing on our pocket dump series, if you will, talking about what makes a good X, piece of gear, whatever. Last episode we did a what makes a good holster, and it was like a 41-minute video of me acoustically explaining what a good holster is and all the details. So we're going to do the same kind of thing with actual firearms. So there's a lot to cover, so I'm going to save the fancy intros and all that kind of stuff, and we're going to dig right in. I have a pretty good array of things that will get me demonetized / taken down on platforms, and then hopefully these up here will save me in the whole handling of it when I pick them up. I'm looking at communist platforms when I say that. So the first thing that we recommend when looking for a firearm to carry every single day, and that's kind of what we're considering. We're not talking about, you know, duty use or competition or any of that kind of stuff. We're talking about a civilian everyday carry. This is your daily use pistol that you go out grocery shopping, to work, whatever. That's what we're talking about. And there's different kind of tiers here, but at the end of the day, the primary facets that your firearm should have are serviceability, availability, and then affordability. So let's kind of break that down a little bit. Serviceability, it needs to be from a serviceable make. So, and by serviceable, that means like Glock, for instance. Glock is a make in this term. I'm kind of using car terms in this point right now because there's, you know, company, you know, whatever. But serviceable means that that brand is used in some form of service, whether that be militia work, law enforcement, military, contracting, any of that kind of stuff, on any kind of, you know, national, international, I don't care. If a country is using it in some kind of serviceable standard, that's something that we can look at to see if it is a reliable firearm. There's reports, there's, you know, use of forces, there's all this other kind of stuff that shows whether or not that brand is reliable or not, because at the end of the day, these all have to be reliable. Anything that you tuck into your pants has to be reliable. Ask my mom. So serviceability, the first part of serviceability is make. It has to be from a good make, a company that sells their products or services sells their products to a some kind of duty use. It also has to be a serviceable model. For instance, a Sig Sauer as a company, they make the serviceable Sig Sauer M17s and M18s that are used in military service, but they also make the P938, which is most certainly not a serviceable firearm model. There's no service in the country or anywhere that uses that, because they're weird and they make me feel uncomfortable. And every time you go to a gun store, no matter what you're looking for, the person behind the counter always tries to upsell you to that because they get some kind of weird commission off of it. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's just what it seems. But make, model should be serviceable in the best case scenario. And the third part of serviceability is the caliber that the firearm is chambered in. It needs to be a serviceable caliber. And there's a couple of reasons for that. And when I mean serviceable caliber, I mean 9mm, 40 cal, 45 ACP, 10mm, 5.7 by 28, except that's a little too expensive and it's a little hard to find and stuff like that. And then there's also some revolver rounds, you know, the 357 and the 38 Special can be considered serviceable. At least they were serviceable. So that's really kind of a gist of the calibers that I would recommend, that most people would recommend, not just me. Who cares about what I have to say? But the thing that makes you kind of determine which caliber you want to use is really, you kind of want to look at the availability in your area, the availability online. The price per round is definitely something that is kind of it's up to you how much you want to spend, so long as you're buying, you know, a good chunk of it every year to get proficient at it and put some rounds in and have your nice little stockpile and stuff like that. And then also just the overall performance, what you want to do. If you live up in the mountains, maybe you want to do something more like 10 millimeter and up. You know, you want to get something with a little bit more ass to it. If capacity is something that you want to value in this situation, then that's another thing. You know, a 9 millimeter is going to hold more rounds than a 45 ACP gun using the same size. So that's something you have to consider. When it comes to capacity, I would say 10 rounds is a good minimum to go by. I'm not going to get into a capacity war or a caliber war, because that's just, it's so overdone, and there's so much arbitrary, you know, things you could say to kind of justify more or less, or this caliber over that caliber. So pick a caliber that you like, that's easy to get a hold of, that's good to shoot, that's effective, and run with it. So availability. We already kind of talked about availability a little bit when talking about ammunition. So availability goes into that, the availability of the round that you're using. But for that specific firearm model that you're interested in getting, looking at the availability of spare parts for that firearm, aka, you know, the springs that wear over time through use, magazines, like stock, like OEM magazines, like original manufacturer magazines, sights, if you want to do sights, optic mounting plates, base plates for your magazines, flared mag wells, holsters. If you need a holster, we can get you. AmericanConcealment.com. Use code BUGOUT for 10% off. But all of this kind of stuff that accommodates your firearm and makes it easy for you to carry and like customize your firearm to what you want. You want to look to make sure that the firearm that you are looking at has that accommodation. So, and you also want to make sure that they're affordable as well, like to where there are magazines readily available for you to buy if you want to have a stockpile of magazines, which I recommend that you do have a pretty good build to, because magazines should be considered wearable items just like springs are and all that other crap. But you also want to make sure that they're affordable. You want to make sure that your magazines aren't $60, because that sucks. So look, you know, if your magazines are less than 30 bucks, I think you're in the clear. You know, Smith & Wesson mags, a lot of those, they're built really solid, but they're kind of expensive. So it's kind of like the caliber debate. It's really depending on how much you as a person are willing to pay. I mean, if you're out there like getting that fucking bread, you can get that $60 magazine gun. That's cool. But you know, for like Glock magazines, they're like 19 bucks. You know, you can find those. So that's something you have to consider. But availability of the firearm, the availability of even just customer support from them. How is their warranty? How are they, you know, how are they when you contact them as a company for questions? Are they quick with their response times? Anything like that? And to figure that kind of stuff out, that's really just kind of going through forums online to see other people who have had problems with their firearm and have contacted them to see how they were treated. Obviously you can't, like, you're not just gonna be like, hey, just checking in to see how your response times are before I buy this Walther or whatever. That's kind of nerdy. You could try that, I guess, I don't know. But, so anyways, yeah. And then that's pretty much it for affordability, or for availability. Affordability is the last part of the whole rounded, the triad or trinity or whatever you want to call it, of what makes a good what makes a good gun at its base. The gun has to be relatively affordable. You can't, I mean, you can buy the really expensive gun and that's completely fine. Again, it's user preference. If you are making that money and you want to buy a $3,000 handgun, no one's stopping you, and that's going to be probably a pretty nice gun. But there's a slight, you know, depreciation the higher you go up, right? So the really, really, really expensive $3,000 handgun isn't going to be 3 times as good as a $1,000 handgun, typically. So there's a you know, there's a diminishing return the higher you go up. There's only so well a handgun can perform. So keep that in mind. So when you're talking about affordability, we're talking about affordability of the gun itself, the affordability of all the aftermarket support, like I said, magazines, holsters, yada, yada, yada. And that's something that you have to take into consideration, because if you are wanting to daily carry this, then if you have the right mind, you want to put some repetitions down in it. So you want to make sure that you're getting as affordable of a way of giving you range time and dry fire time and all this other kind of stuff as possible. So affordability, keeping that down is important. That's kind of it when it comes to the trinity of what makes a good gun. So we'll go ahead and move on to the different tiers of what kind of guns you yourself can carry. Again, this is user preference. It just depends. That's why we're going to go through each one here. We have 4 tiers, and we're just going to kind of move from biggest to smallest and go through the pros and cons of each one. So the first one is the full size bracket. Now, full-size handgun is just that. It's full size, and obviously these are all clear. Calm down. So these are full-size duty use guns. That means they have more close to a 5-inch barrel, typically a 4.5 and up barrel, and they have a full magazine, and typically they're going to have double stacked magazines unless you're getting real subcompact or you're doing something like a 1911, which that's just, again, that's user preference, but single stack magazines obviously carry less capacity, so you get into the issue of how many rounds do you want to personally carry. This right here is a FNX 45. This is a gun that I've had for a while, and I like it a lot. It has a TLR1 HL on it from Streamlight, have a little bit of aftermarket sights, whatever, but this is a full-size gun. Some other variations here, you have things like the Glock 34, and then you also, if you cut about a ½ inch off of that, you would have the Glock 17, and then also right here we have a mold for a Walther PDP full size, which is a great gun, by the way. So these are all full-size guns. These are big old honky-tonk boys. Now, the benefits of full-size guns is you're going to have a little bit more of a ballistic advantage because of the longer barrel, even though handguns suck in general. You're going to have that extra magazine capacity just because it is longer. It's a full-size grip. You're going to have a better grip here just because you're going to be able to get your entire hand on it, to where if you did do a shorter grip, like a compact, subcompact, whatever, if you do have big old hands, unlike me, your pinky might be hanging off. I got like long lady fingers, so I don't really have that problem. But you know, those are relatively the benefits. Sometimes a more full-size gun has a little bit better of recoil impulse because there's just more surface area onto your palm, to where when that recoil, when that reciprocation comes back, it just redistributes into your palm a little bit more evenly than a slimmer gun would with a lower profile, to where it's going to direct a harder amount of pulse into a smaller amount of area. This one arguably could evenly distribute it a little better. Trying to think of any more positives. Accuracy could be something that could be an increase, along with the ballistic advantages of a longer barrel. But you also have to consider that handguns, in the grand scheme of firearms, in comparison to rifles and stuff like that, these are not very accurate and they're not very ballistically sound, just because they're handguns, they're short barrels, all this kind of stuff. They suck. But if you are worried about maximizing the amount of performance, which that's awesome, full size might be a good thing for you. Now, to the cons of full size, which is pretty obvious, is that they are bulky. They're going to be obviously longer, so if you are inside the waistbanding it, they're going to go farther down into below your pants line, to where they're going to rub on your hip, they're going to rub down there, they're just going to, you know, they're just going to take up more space. They're going to be heavier. You have a longer grip here that's going to be even harder to conceal, even with a claw or any of that kind of stuff. You know, refer to our holster video for kind of what we're talking about. But this area is always going to be a little bit tricky regardless of the firearm that you're carrying, and it just makes it that much more difficult with a full-size firearm. So this area right here is going to be a little bit more tricky to conceal. It's not impossible, it's done all the time. I carry this every once in a while. I carry full-size sometimes, and we make these guns disappear, especially with our holsters, but it is a thing that you have to take into consideration. And if you get a holster that doesn't accommodate you in that regard, you're gonna have a little bit of issues. So you might have to kind of dress around the firearm. You might have to wear more baggy clothes than normal, or wear a flannel during the summer, like a fat kid that has to wear a shirt when he goes swimming and he feels self-conscious about it. So those are all things that you have to consider. The reason, and because of that reason, because of the unwieldiness and unconcealability of a full size that some people consider, they move down a little bit to what is commonly known as the compact section of firearms. And these are pretty popular. They're kind of outshined a little bit right now by a little bit the smaller guns that we're going to talk about next. But it seems like the everyday carry guns get smaller and smaller and smaller until something stupid happens in the world, and then they go to full size again, and then they kind of work their way back down. So, but this is always the warm, the just right porridge, the compact side. And so, kind of going into the real blaster here. This is a Glock 19. This is my own personal Glock 19. I have it tricked out a little bit. I got a red dot on it and a light, and that's not a big deal. But as you can see, it's still a pretty good sized firearm. It has a little over a 4-inch barrel, 4 point whatever. They get weird dust. It's like 4 1/4, I'm pretty sure, but it's roughly 1/4 of an inch to a 1/2 inch shorter than these barrels over here in the full size section. But it's still a decent sized barrel, a decent length barrel, so you're still going to have that ballistic edge. You're still going to have decent accuracy. I don't know, I couldn't think of that word. You're still going to have decent accuracy for a handgun, and it's going to be a lot better in concealment. It's a little bit shorter. It's about a 1/2 inch shorter. And then also this part is also shorter as well, to where when you conceal carry, like I said, this is going to be easier to push up against your body, and it's going to be less of a lever to where it's going to print less. People really like these. Even law enforcement and other institutions in that regard will carry a compact size firearm instead of a full size, just because of the weight and just because of the, you know, the overall handling of the gun, apparently. I think that the Glock 19, kind of talking off record here, I think the Glock 19 it's a great firearm. Obviously, I mean, I'm not the first person that said that. A lot of people swear by the Glock 19. It's a great size, and it pretty much does most of the things that a duty firearm will do. The beauty behind something like a Glock, Smith & Wesson, Sig Sauer, all of the big name like duty firearms, to where there's a compact version and then a full-size version, is that, for instance, this Glock 34, I could take this full-size magazine out of this Glock 34 and put it into my Glock 19. So the beauty of a compact gun is that I could take full size, if you get the right gun, by the way, if I could take the full-size versions of the magazines and put them into this, to where I have the full-size capacity if needed. It's going to stick out a little bit more, and you can get spacers to make it to where like the grip continues on and makes it look a little better. But I could put a Glock 17 mag in this, Glock 34 mag, they're the same thing, and have that extra 2 to 3 rounds, and then add in extension, and you can have a bunch of rounds in there. So the problem with the full size is that I can't take the magazine out of this and put it into this Glock 34, just because the grip on this Glock 34 is far too tall to where it won't seat the magazine from this. So there is a little bit of an edge in using a compact firearm instead of a full size. This can mirror to a large degree what this gun can do, but this one can't conceal as easy as this one. So just kind of a little riddle for you. But you know, there's a bunch of Glock 19s out there. The Smith & Wesson M&P 2.0 is an absolute workhorse. I couldn't recommend that one enough. That's going to be a great firearm as well, that has the same kind of magazine compatibility that I talked about with its full-size brother. Up here, this is the FN 509, another absolute workhorse, really good. There's also the Sig Sauer P320s if you want to blow your balls off. I don't even know if they used to go off accidentally. I think those Sig Sauers, they look too good for me not to be interested in one, but I also don't want to castrate myself. So it's just, I don't know. So the downsides of this are obviously you're going to have slightly less ballistic advantage as the full size. That's whatever. It's very, very, that's minutia there. That's a very minute thing to be concerned with. One other thing that I want to kind of talk about before we move on to this, another thing with the compact firearms is the introduction to compensators and, you know, different kind of standoff muzzle brakes and stuff. Like the Radiant Afterburner and, you know, Sage Dynamics through Agency Arms, they have compensators. But if you compensate this Glock 19, it adds a compensator to it. It adds about a ½ inch. So at that point, you reduce your muzzle flip, you reduce your recoil overall, and therefore increasing your follow-up shots, doing all that kind of stuff, while keeping no longer than your normal full size. So you can turn this firearm into a full size length while having the added benefit of it being compensated, to where if you were to compensate one of these, it would add even more length and add even more weight and unwieldiness and all that kind of stuff to these, to where this one just turns it into a full size but has that added capability. It's kind of like if you were to take like a, you know, a shorter barreled rifle and not compensate it, but put a silencer on it, you know, or suppressor, whatever you want to call it. It keeps it that same length, but it adds a lot more capabilities. So that's another thing. But back to the downsides, they don't offer as much of a ballistic advantage or accuracy advantage, again, arguable, to the full-size brothers of the compacts. And depending on your experience in carrying, how you carry, where you carry, all that kind of stuff, your personal preference, it still might be too large of a piece of tool to tuck in your pants, to where printing's still an issue. You know, maybe you need to tuck your shirt in and, you know, you wear tighter clothing, or you need a beltless option, whatever. I mean, whatever the problem is. So you might need to work your way down even further to what is considered in the industry subcompact. Now the subcompact guns are pretty cool. They're what's hot right now. A lot of people are carrying subcompact firearms, and that's perfectly fine. Now the subcompact, obviously, when comparing it to the Glock 19 here, is significantly smaller. And obviously this one has a light on it and a red dot. So just kind of imagine this is a bare bone. This doesn't have any attachments on it. This is a Smith & Wesson Shield, by the way, and it's an amazing gun. I absolutely love my Shield. But as you can see, it's significantly smaller, and it's also thinner as well. This is a single stack. So you're getting a lot less rounds. I think this holds 7 rounds of 9mm. But it's extremely subcompact. It's very thin, so it hugs onto your body pretty well. And look at that grip. That grip is so small to where when you conceal this, if you're appendix carrying it, this gun can absolutely disappear, to where you still have a fighting chance. You still have a tool that could take care of a job. It's going to have a downside of having low capacity and lower accuracy than these two, and also a little bit less ballistic advantage as these two as well. But you have a lot smaller of a setup here. Some other comparables, the Glock 43X is an extremely popular subcompact variant. The thing with these is that they can hold significantly more rounds, especially if you go an aftermarket route, something called a Shield magazine. You can get that from Shield Arms, I'm pretty sure is the company name, to where you could turn this Glock 43 into a 15 round capacity firearm, similar to this Glock 19. This Glock 19 holds 15 rounds. But if you get a reliable Shield Arms mag, which big thing there, key term is reliable, you can have the capacity of this 19 in this small package. And they are roughly the same size as the Shield here. I mean, they're pretty damn similar. And to have the added capabilities of the capacity, you eat up a lot of the downsides. Now, again, some other things. Another version is the P365s. The P365, this is the P365 XL. The P365 normal one is similar to this. So as you can see, it's a little bit shorter. The XL obviously is that. It's a little bit longer of a barrel and a little bit longer of a grip, but you're gonna have higher capacity with this and a little bit better ballistic advantage, and you're going to have a little bit more options. Like for instance, this Shield does not have an accessory rail, to whereas this P365 XL does, to where you can add flashlights, stuff like that. And it's still very slim. It's a very slim design. This one I can get a full grip on, and I think that's pretty dang cool. You can also do that with the Glock 43 X. The Glock 43, you're still going to have problems with getting a full grip, and also the Shield, my pinky hangs off just a little bit. But the again, cons are you're going to have less options when it comes to flashlights. Your flashlights are going to be pretty anemic in terms of being very effective, kind of like the, this X300 is going to have a pretty good setup. This TLR1 here is going to have a really nice setup when it comes to the lumens and the candela pushing out, so you're going to be able to do a lot of impeding of visual horizon and stuff like that. The lights that are commonly in this section of the subcompact, they're very anemic in terms of how these perform in comparison. So you're going to have a lot less capabilities. Red dots, you're going to have a lot harder of a time finding a red dot for this tier of firearms, the subcompacts. They're out there. They make plenty of them. They make plenty of really good ones, but it's funneled down. And then also, of course, just the regular capacity issue, ballistic, but the overall ballistics of the bullet after it exits your muzzle, and the accuracy. That's pretty much it. But the pros are they are far easier to carry. It gives you less of an excuse to not carry, and this works a lot better for more compromising environments to where you might not be able to carry. And I'm not going to go into detail on that, but if it's just something to where like it would be really hard for you to carry because of how you dress or where you're going, whatever, subcompacts is a good place to start, because these are going to be a little bit trickier, the compacts and the full size. So moving down even further, keep in mind, off record, this is kind of the line. This right here is the line to where these are serviceable all the way through. These have all been in some form of service. These are all in a serviceable caliber. These are all serviceable makes and models. So keep that in mind. Full size and compact are king when it comes to getting all the serviceability, availability, affordability. All the serviceables are on this side. When you get to the subcompact side, you're starting to lose that serviceability. These are all 9mm, and I'm pretty sure they make them in 40 and 45 and stuff like that, but these are all serviceable rounds, but they're not going to have an adequate amount of capacity that could be considered serviceable. These are ankle guns at best if they are used in some form of service. So keep that in mind. You're starting to see the they're starting to get out of that serviceability to where you're not going to see the records to see how well this firearm works in an actual gunfight. There's not as many reports as something like a Glock 19, for instance. So, but if you don't value that, and you watch a bunch of reviews of people beating the hell out of these on YouTube and stuff, and you're like, that's good for me, whatever. Cool, man. As long as this gun works, that's all that matters. So, again, we're starting to get out of this. Moving on down, we're out of the serviceability aspect of it. These guns that I'm about to talk about, the micro, nano, however you want to talk to them, we're out of serviceability at this point. But I'm going to explain why these are important, the pros of them, and the cons. So, last section of the tier list is what I'm just going to consider the micro section of firearms, of everyday carry firearms. And that is just that. Very, very, very small firearms that absolutely disappear and are very, very small. Now, this is for a time where you need to conceal carry a firearm and without a doubt, not print, not let it be known that you're carrying a firearm. You want this gun to absolutely disappear to where without a doubt no one knows that you have this firearm. And I know that's the goal for concealed carry in general, but you know, you kind of reach up a little bit too high, or you lean back or whatever, or you bend over if you're hip carrying, you could still, you maybe get a little bit of printing, and that's just a part of concealed carry. You know, our holsters, you know, if you get a right holster, like an ACS holster, they disappear as much as they physically can. Physics can only do so much, but this kind of firearm here is going to absolutely go away if you're tucking this in and you're using the right belt and whatever. This is a double tap defense Derringer that I bought for like $199 years and years and years ago. They're like $500 now, so I feel pretty good about that. But this is a Derringer that shoots .45 caliber, and it's like 5/8 of an inch thick. And I will tell you with great impunity that this is by far the most uncomfortable firearm I have ever handled in my entire life. It is very painful to shoot, but that's not really why you buy this kind of gun. You get a little Kydex holster with this. You can pocket carry this if, you know, that's the way you swing. There's a lot of different ways you can carry something this small. It's snag free, all this kind of stuff, and you get 2 rounds of .45, and you get a little hatch here that has a little stripper clip that you could put 2 more into it for a quick reload, and that's pretty cool. I feel like James Bond. But if you want to go to a place to where, even, I mean, this, going to the gym, going, you know, to going on a run, this kind of gun, it's so light. This entire frame is aluminum, and then the barrel itself is steel, so it's extremely light. It's extremely slim. It absolutely disappears. You can carry this without a belt just because of how light it is, and you just forget about it. But this gives you a zero excuse reason to not have this on you. Again, it's in a serviceable caliber. The capacity is terrible. It's definitely not used in any kind of serviceability, any kind of service anywhere in the world, but this is going to give you something to carry in a area to where you cannot carry at all. There are a bunch of different Derringers like this. There are snub nose revolvers. This is a bigger snub nose revolver. This is the Chiappa Rhino 2-inch, but there are other really small Smith & Wesson 2-inch snub nose revolvers, Ruger revolvers. There are super tiny slide guns like the, God, what is it called? The Glock 42s and stuff like that, but they're super small. The Ruger LCPs and all that, they're micro. They're so small and they just disappear on you. It's good for me, from talking kind of, again, talking off the record for personal preference, it's very nice to have a firearm this small for those instances to where I'm like, man, I'm just going to hit the bike trail. I'm going to go on a run. I'm going to go, you know, to a place that's just like, I'm just wearing, you know, shorts without a belt or any of that kind of stuff. It's good to be able to have this with a belt, with a holster that has something like an Ulti-Clip that can just clamp down on your waistline, with or without a belt, and go anywhere you need to go. It gives you a lot of really good peace of mind, to where no matter what, you have something that goes boom, just to protect yourself, protect your family, protect people around you. That's really cool. It's also very nice to have this kind of subcompact thing to where you're like, man, I'm going somewhere to where it's like, I don't want to be known that I have a firearm at all, to where even if I'll get in trouble or something like that, whatever you want to talk about, But this is a firearm that has decent capacity. It's like 7 rounds, but it still absolutely disappears if you have the right belt set up to where, you know, you're going to have a pretty decent workhorse of a firearm. But moving on to compacts, it's really good to have a compact because they're just all around the jack of all trades. They're sweet. You could trick them out. You could put all the full-size fixins on them when it comes to lights and red dots and sights and all that kind of stuff. And you're really not burdened by any kind of restriction, to where compacts are good, just like that's my main squeeze. And then also having a full-size just for, well, I have a completely, you know, it's completely set up to where it's like I have full ballistic availability, I have full ballistic accuracy, all the kind of things that a full size comes with. I have all the capacity I could think of that's possible for this system, whatever you want to call it. It's good to have the variety. That way you have zero reason to not go without a firearm. And that's what's most important, is to make sure that behind every blade of grass there's someone with one of these tucked in to their pants. That's really important for the furtherment, the betterment of society. Just because a lot of bad shit is going on that we see all the time, and sometimes it hits close to home, sometimes it doesn't. But if it ever happens to you or to someone near you, I would feel a lot better if someone had any of this in their pockets, pants, whatever, to be able to stop evil from happening. Every time, I know I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but every time you see something on the news, you're like, old lady gets stomped to death by, you know, a 17-year-old, and you're like, man, if only she had one of these to just offer that fighting chance, then it might have been different. It might not have, you know, she might not have had time to get it and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying it would have been 100% fixed, but it would have just made so much better of a, she would have had that opportunity. She would have had that fighting chance. And I think in order to increase those fighting chances and increase the odds of that kind of just heinous stuff from happening, is to spread the word about the varieties of everyday carry firearms. You shouldn't convince an old lady to get one of these and expect her to carry this in her waistband. But you might be able to convince her to carry one of these little guys in her purse, or, you know, in her waistband or anything like that. And this is a hell of a lot better than her, you know, bleeding to death at the grocery store parking lot. So spreading the word and getting people to defend themselves is awesome. So, you know, spread the word of this video, spread this video around, you know, kind of start a conversation down there. I can't talk about every single firearm that fits the criteria here because there's thousands, if not millions of them, I don't know. But hopefully this brackets up a pretty good amount of things that you can keep into consideration for first-time gun buyers, or just people who are wanting to fine-tune their setup and what to look for, and maybe pass on some information to people, their friends, family, to make sure that everyone is carrying. We at American Concealment Solutions, we make holsters that optimize the carrying of these firearms. Our previous video, check it out. It's long, but I swear it's worth a view. It talks about what makes a good holster. Even if you don't buy from us, it talks about what makes a good holster and why. We make holsters professionally, and we see it every single day. I carry 16 hours a day and have for the last decade, or over a decade. But, you know, I have thousands of hours of carrying. I've bought shitty holsters. I've bought good holsters. So now I'm in the industry of making holsters, and I know what I prefer, and I know why I prefer it. And that's what that video is about. So find you a good holster, find you a good firearm, carry that baby every single day. When you're at home, carry. I don't care. You know, just carry your firearm. You're in your backyard gardening, carry your firearm. Make it to where it's a part of your body, and make it to where it's not a hassle to have this in your pants. And I promise you, there's a way to carry all 4 of these, not all at once, don't be a psychopath, but carry this one, carry that one, carry that one, carry that one, as comfortably as possible. You can carry this full size and make it comfortable. You can carry this compact and make it comfortable. There are things to do. Refer to our videos. There are things that you can do to make these disappear on you and become an extension of your body. So with that said, We're going to go ahead and wrap up this video. We're going to continue on with the series talking about different pieces of kit that we everyday carry and going into super long lengths like we are right now. And yeah, check us out on Patreon. $1 a month gets you into sweepstakes to win all kinds of free shit, including fully customizable holsters to apparel like this. If you know, you know. It's kind of a negative, so you can't really tell, but it's Ruby Ridge. But we have a lot of shirts like that. Again, if you use code BUGOUT, it'll give you 10% off. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We're American Concealment Solutions, and we safeguard the tools of liberty. I'll see you then.